afternoon. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Mayor and City Council of the City of College Park. I'm Mayor Bianca Motley Broom. We have a quorum present with council members Clay, Karn, and Allen, so I will call the meeting to order at this time. I will also take a motion to enter into executive session for the purposes of discussion of real estate and litigation.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Clay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Allen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. That is unanimous amongst those present. We will go into executive session. Welcome back. We are ready to begin our workshop session. It is 6:08 p.m. The first item on the agenda is the presentation of the annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2022. I believe Mr. Moses will be heading up that presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening to the Mayor, City Council members, management, and staff. Thanks for having me here today to present the audit results. Hopefully you had a chance to look at the annual comprehensive financial report. It was a big document, as well as the auditor's discussion and analysis. And that document I'll be presenting from today and kind of touching on the highlights. If you have any questions as I'm going through, you can stop and ask, or you can save your questions at the end, and we'll address your questions at that moment. All right.
We will hold our questions until you're finished.
Okay. All right, all right, just a quick update about Malden & Jenkins. We actually have 14 offices now in 6 states, and we added our latest addition in Raleigh, North Carolina. We serve over 650 governments in the Southeast, and about 150 plus of them received the GFOA Award in Excellence in Financial Reporting, which includes the City of College Park. Again, I was the partner responsible for the overall audit engagement with over 24 years of experience. This year we had Meredith Lipson to do the quality control review, and she's been with the firm over 31 years. And of course we had other managers and staff participating with the audit this year. Of course, the financial statements are the responsibility of management. Our responsibility is to give an opinion that the financial statements are materially correct. We've issued an unmodified or a clean opinion, which is what you would hope to get from the external audit. Our audit report did include your blended component unit, the Business and Industrial Development Authority, BIDA. However, our opinion did not cover your DMO, the Destination Marketing Organization, which is presented in your statements as a discretely presented component unit. Those statements were audited by other auditors, and we relied on their report. As far as the report in accordance with the government auditing standards or the Yellow Book report, we didn't have any findings, no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Hats off to management and staff working very hard to make sure that the records are in good, an accurate position for us to do the audit. As far as the report in accordance with the uniform guidance, the single audit report, of course, any governments that receive and expend at least $750,000 of federal awards is required to have a single audit. This year you're required to have a single audit on your COVID-19 and CDBG programs. And we issued unmodified or clean opinions on those 2 programs as well. No issues with the compliance requirements that we tested for those 2 programs. Right along. As far as our relationship with management, we received full cooperation from management, staff, and others. There were no disagreements with management on accounting issues or financial reporting matters. We did have some audit adjustments. Those adjustments are attached to the hard copy of this presentation. We didn't have any past audit adjustments, meaning that anything that came to our attention, those adjustments were made and reflected in the city's general ledger and ultimately in the city's financial statements. Main thing here I want to point out is that we are independent of the city and its financial reporting process in accordance with AICPA professional standards. There are no fees paid to Malden & Jenkins for any type of management advisory services that would have impacted our independence as your external auditor. All right, next few slides kind of go over some financial trends. This first slide is looking at your operating and interest revenues over the last 10 years for your electric fund, which is the city's cash cow fund, and then your other proprietary funds. And you can see that your revenues for your electric fund increased from $36.4 million to about $42 million, while your other proprietary funds revenues went from $22.3 million combined to about $33 million as of June 30, 2022. And the revenues went up for the most part for your other proprietary funds, going into a full operating service following the pandemic. And then your convention center revenues and GIC revenues a little more than what it were in the prior year. And then also for your FAA project fund with the implementation of GASB 87 dealing with leases, you recognize about $2.8 million of lease income in that fund, which was higher than the revenue in the previous year. All right, looking at the change in net position or your net income and net loss for your electric fund and your other proprietary funds over the last 10 years, page 10, you can see that your electric funds revenue your change in net position for your electric fund was $4 million in 2021. In 2022 was about $3.3 million, so a slight decrease compared to the previous year. Now, your other proprietary funds, you had a positive change in net position in 2021 of about $8.3 million, but for 2022 you had a negative change in net position of about $210,000, and basically you had larger transfers in 2021 in your convention center fund, BIDA, and GICC Arena compared to transfers into those funds during fiscal year 2022. And so that's one of the main reasons why that change in net position is much less this year compared to prior year. All right. This next slide is looking at your bad debt reserves for your electric fund and your water and sewer fund. You can see that your electric fund is still seeing that upward trend in those bad debt reserves, $8.3 million in 2021, and it went up to about $8.8 million in 2022, while your water and sewer bad debt reserves stayed pretty much flat, about $1.6 million over the last few years. All right, looking at your fund balance over the last 10 years for your general fund and your other governmental funds. Of course, your general fund is your main operating fund. And your fund balance went from, for your general fund, $16.8 million in 2021 to about $23.6 million in 2022. The main reason for that increase in your fund balance is pretty much transfers in, which was about $5.6 million. So if you look at your revenues compared to expenditures for your general fund, you only had about almost $500,000 in excess of expenditures. So most of that increase in your fund balance came from transfers in. And then for your other governmental funds, your fund balance went from $12.2 million to about $28.2 million. And the reason for that increase is in your T-SPLOS fund, you all did issue about $10,950 million of revenue bonds, which is shown as other financing sources. So that increased your fund balance in the T-SPLOS fund. And so that's why you're seeing that huge increase in fund balance for your other governmental funds. All right, this slide is looking at your fund balance as a percentage of total expenditures over the last 10 years. Of course, the good rule of thumb is 2 to 3 months reserve, or anywhere from 16 to 25%. And you see for your general fund, you had an increase going from 59% in 2021 to about 80% in 2022, and that represents about a 9.6-month reserve. Now, if you combine all of your governmental funds, that percentage is much higher, coming in about 281%, but again, that's due to your T-SPLOS fund, showing about $11.4 million increase in fund balance due to the issuance of those revenue bonds. All right. All right, so again, like I alluded to earlier, we didn't have any findings, no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. We do have recommendations for improvements. This one here dealing with proprietary activities and cash flows, I always like to kind of keep repeating this one. Looking at your convention center fund, you have external or outside financing of about $34 million and about $4.3 million of internal financing, representing advances from other funds or due to other funds. And so, but as of year end, the convention center fund reported a net loss of about $5.5 million, and that was before receiving transfers in about $2.7 million. So your net position actually decreased by roughly $2.8 million. So again, we just want you to continue monitoring your external and internal financing and make sure those advances are being paid down in accordance with the repayment plan that the council approved back in 2013. And that holds true to your BIDA as well as to the GICC Arena Fund. For BIDA, you have about $72.5 million of external financing and revenue bonds, and about $11.6 million of internal financing represented by advances and due to other funds. Without future sales of your undeveloped property that's owned by BIDA, basically, in order to continue the cash flow assistance, you would have to receive cash flow assistance from non-BIDA sources to meet the annual financing needs for BIDA. So that includes, paying down your external debt on an annual basis, plus your internal financing as well of that $11.6 million that's going to be paid back over the course of several years. So again, as you have those land sales, in accordance with your repayment plan, that has to be used to pay down that advance. Those advances came from the general fund as well as from the electric fund. And then the GICC Arena Fund had about $32.3 million of outside financing and revenue bonds that require about $2.9 million of annual debt service payments. The Arena Fund had a loss of about $3.5 million before transfers of about $4.1 million. But it did have a positive change in net position of about $700,000 as a result of the transfers into that fund. So again, just continue monitoring these activities to make sure that you'll be able to repay back the external and internal financing requirements. All right, dealing with customer deposits, again, another repeat. Prior to you all implementing the pooled cash, you did have separate bank accounts for your customer deposits, which was supposed to be restricted. When you went to a pooled cash account, all of that was pooled into one bank account for the most part, and so you no longer have separate bank accounts for your customer deposits. And so we continue to make that recommendation that those should not be commingled with your operating funds. And then the last management point is on capital assets. During our testing of your finance purchases as it relates to debt, we noticed that the asset side of this was not captured in your detailed capital assets for your governmental activities. And so we just recommend, as you're bringing on the debt, and if it's used to purchase assets, make sure that's being picked up on the other side as well into your detailed capital assets listings. All right, GASB continues to be very busy with new GASB standards. We implemented GASB 80, or the city implemented GASB 87 this year for 2022 that relates to leases. And so we had to scrub all of your agreements to make sure that everything was captured. You did have leases as the city as a lessor, and so that's been recognized in your financial statements. You'll see lease receivables, deferred inflows of resources pertaining to those receivables, and then recognizing that revenue as well in the current period. We didn't have any leases as the city being the lessee. Those amounts that we did find were immaterial, so those were not reported in your financial statements. GASB 96, which deals with subscription-based information technology arrangements, that's applicable for the current year that you're in, 2023. Very similar to GASB 87 dealing with leases. So if you have an iCloud subscription that you're utilizing, you have to recognize that liability and plus a right to use asset in your financial statements. And so, so that'll be applicable for the current year that you're in. And the last thing I want to talk about is we continue to offer free continuing education classes for our clients free of charge. Since the pandemic, we've been doing it virtually. It's been, I think our clients like the virtual aspect of that, and so we try to do at least 4 a year. During the pandemic and after the pandemic, with the influx of a lot of federal dollars from the government, with all the complexities, we had more than just 4. I think one time we had six classes just on federal grants and the complexities of those programs. And so you all have participated in those classes, and we appreciate the city management staff for attending those classes. But if anybody else want to be added to that list, just let me know and we'll make sure you get that invite. But that concludes my presentation. Again, it was an honor and pleasure in providing services to the city, and we look forward to this upcoming year, which starts pretty soon.
Thank you, Mr. Moses. Councilman Clay?
Yes, I've got several questions. First off, on the page where you talked about a bad debt reserve,
Yes, sir.
that's a cumulative reserve.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So, since we'll probably never recover that reserve, what does that really mean for our financial position?
So right now, this is offsetting your revenues, and so, I believe in the past, if I recall correctly, prior management did not want to write that off. I think at one time you all were using the collection agency to try to collect on some of those delinquent accounts. So, it's kind of up to you all as a governing body if you want to try to go after them, or just write it off and no longer report it at all. So right now, it's just a conjure account against your receivables, and so it's not being, your statements are not being grossed up. So again, it's offsetting your receivable amount. So it has to be a cleanup for the city. If the city were to write it off, then they don't have to keep up with those old delinquent accounts. You just look at what you have delinquent as of current year.
Does it make us more financially attractive? We're never going to get that money back, most of it. And it keeps getting bigger every year, and we've had this discussion before. Does it, at some point, make us look better from a bond rating or other position if we're not continuing to carry that debt reserve?
Probably so, because if you look in the footnotes, you have to disclose what that allowance is. And so if someone is, looking at your notes and seeing that amount continues to grow, if they're comparing it to the previous year, that might be alarming to them. So if you all decided just to go ahead and write it off, and then you won't have that to deal with.
Well, not necessarily write everyone off, but
Or just those.
debt that isn't more than 2 years old,
Right,
let's
right.
say, or something like
Correct.
that.
Correct.
But would that improve our financial qualifications and possibly improve our bond rating? Could it?
It won't affect the bottom line. Again, it's already reflected as reducing your revenues. So every time it goes up, again, it reduces your receivable and revenue. So it won't improve your bottom line, but, I don't know how much it would go up, as far as your bond rating, if they see that, you've written that off and now you're having a much smaller allowance for that.
Okay.
If you're
Next.
able to collect it, of course, that will increase your rate.
Yeah, okay. I didn't see how it would, but I thought I'd give it a try. How many months, if our revenue sources dried up totally, we're talking about reserve, how many months of reserve do we have as of this report?
Are you talking about for your general fund or?
Well, let's do both. Let's talk general fund first. I think you said, what was it?
9.6 months.
9.6 months.
That's a snapshot in time. Doesn't mean that you're at that amount every month throughout the year.
Pardon?
It's a snapshot in time, so that's just as of June 30th. It doesn't mean that you have, if you looked at October, it would be a different amount, so it's
Well,
just.
sure, but it's at the end of the year, which
Yes.
is, you need to pick some milestone at some
Right.
point. So that's, you're saying we have about nine months of reserve.
Yes.
Now, if you take into account the city as a whole, and assuming legal transfers between accounts, because some money is restricted, right? You just can't transfer it back and forth.
Right.
But if we were to pool all of our reserve amongst funds, how long could the city operate?
I have to run that calculation for you. I don't know, I've never calculated that.
But presumably it'd be greater than 9 months.
Yes, Now, you kind of do that looking at your governmental funds, and on that one slide, I talked about that percentage being 280-something%, but that's inflated because of the issuance of those bonds that in amount of about $11 million. So that's it's kind of inflated a little bit because of that, because you can only use that money for your T-Splosh projects. You can't use that to cover payroll.
And that's why I said some money is restricted.
Yes,
But the operational cost is in the general fund for the
Correct.
most part.
correct.
So my question really is, if you take the money that's in the reserve of the general fund and you add to it what is transferable from other funds, and take account of our debt, obviously we have to pay debt on the land that we're still trying to sell.
Right.
How much reserve do you think we would have?
Again, it depends. Let's say, for instance, you all decide not to repay the advance, or Vita decides not to repay.
Pay back what?
The advance of $11 million. You say, we're just gonna write that off. We wanna use future land sales to buy more property, and we're just gonna write off the advance of $11 million, which I can't remember the amount that the general fund is owed, then that percentage would come down significantly. Because actually, and that's how I would actually look at it, because that advance has, I know we had some land sales in the current year. I think some of that was used to pay down that advance that Vita has. But I know it's been a large amount for the last several years. And right now, let's see here. So the general fund is owed about, are you looking at the, so you're including the due tos as well? Advance is about about 5 or 6 million. And then you had about, okay, then you had about $2 million too that's owed from the electric, yes. So you're right, about 8 million. So if you were to write off that amount, if that's not collectible, then that percentage would be much lower. And that 9.6-month reserve would be much lower.
So actual money that we could tap on into without having to sell land, et cetera, to get that money, how much reserve would we have then?
If you didn't have to tap into that?
Well, I'm just saying, if all revenue stopped, which means we're not going to sell the land, and we have to still make the debt payment on it, how long could we operate?
I mean, I would still say that 9-month reserve is
About 9
still
months.
pretty.
Okay.
And I'll say this too, if you look at your fund balance in the general fund, it's very liquid. A lot of times, when people look at fund balance, they say that's cash, and a lot of times that's not. But in your case, even if you just look at your unassigned fund balance in the general fund, which is about, eyesight is terrible, 16 million, and then you compare that to your cash and cash equivalents for the general fund at June 30, that's about $17.3 million. So your unassigned fund balance is really liquid at a little bit over 100%. So that's how I would kind of look at it. When looking at your fund balance as a percentage of total expenditures, which is good, 9.6 months reserve, and then also compare the liquidity looking at your cash at year end. And so that shows that the general fund is pretty liquid when you look at it like that.
Okay, last question.
Okay.
Every year, well, not every year, but on several occasions, we've asked you the question, how do we compare with other cities in Georgia as far as our fund balance position and our financial strength?
I mean, just looking at that percentage, when you look at fund balance as a percentage of
Right.
expenditures, and looking at the liquidity of your fund balance, I know some of that, has transfers in, it's pretty strong compared to others. I mean, I would say,
Top 10%?
don't quote me on that. I mean, I put it this way, I have some clients that reserves are much less than 9 months, I put it that way. And some of them have to rely on a tax anticipation note to get them through the subsequent months until the property tax revenues come in.
Well, the reason I brought that up is because I know several years ago, I've been here for a while. Several years ago, we enjoyed a very enviable position as far as other cities in Georgia as to our financial strength. And then came COVID. And I just wanted to say that I think it is a testimony to our staff and to the management of the council as well, but I credit the staff primarily for getting us through the COVID years. And I think of what we did to reduce expenses. I think of some of the things we did at the convention center, for example, and the arena and what have you. And I just want to give a tribute to the staff for the job that I think they have done. And I think it is absolutely remarkable. And I know we're not through the June 30th of this year, but based on everything I've seen, my gut feeling is that we're going to be in a better financial position at the end of this fiscal year. And again, I think that's a real tribute to our staff here, and I thank them.
Yeah, I agree completely.
That's all I had.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilman Carn?
All right, thanks for coming out. I got quite a few questions. Most of them are off of the work packet here, and not this that I'm just seeing, which is good. I guess first, how many years have you done our CAFR?
Oh, let's see here. Probably since maybe 2007, 2008.
07. So that's, what is it? This is 23. What is that? Well, you're the finance guy. How many years is that? Why am I doing the work? Was that 16, 17 years? Something like that. All right, 16 years. A couple of things. I guess I'll jump around a little bit. I thought we still utilized some type of a collection agency, at least in terms of delinquent utility accounts. Did I hear we're not doing that anymore? Or, okay, I thought I heard we weren't doing that.
I can remember if you're still using it or not.
Okay, so we are. And I had a subsequent question. With delinquent sanitation accounts, do we go after them I know we go after electric customers, but same deal? Okay, well, that's good to know. All of the information in the back of your report, I guess, were stats and whatever have you.
In financial statements?
In this loose leaf piece here.
Okay.
I guess I'm asking, where'd you get that data from? I'm assuming, did we just give you the data, or did you?
You're talking about these in the very back?
Essentially, yeah, some of the schedules and different stuff.
Oh, you're talking about, okay.
ACFR,
So the
right?
ACFR, this came from the city. It's
Okay.
unaudited information, the statistical section.
So we gave you all of this information.
Yes.
Okay, that answers that question. Couple of things I saw, and I guess some of this is for you as well. Like packet page 110, for instance. This is about the ARPA special revenue funds and the whole nine. I just at some point would like to see an itemized breakdown of the ARPA funds. Now, I understand the vast majority of that went to, supplementary salary for first responders and the whole nine. So it was 100%. Okay, that answers that question. I asked how long you've been with us, and I know it's been a long time. I can't hardly recall the last time that I have seen a recommendation for a audit of any particular department.
Like an operational audit.
Forensic audit.
I did talk with management about that we do have an advisory practice and that we do have several of our clients that have engaged them to do an operational audit. For instance, like the city of Forest Park, they got a new city manager, this was a couple of years ago. He wanted to have a forensic audit done. They agreed to have an operational audit done, and they engaged David Roberts, who's the partner that leads our advisory practice. They conducted that operational assessment, and it went over very well from the governing body all the way down to management. It had over 300 recommendations and a map on how those recommendations can be implemented.
But we have not.
No.
Right.
I think you had, they did utilize, the city of College Park did utilize David Robertson, his staff, to do a operational audit of the rec department.
Right, yeah. But we haven't gotten an audit from recommendation from you guys. And a lot of this, I say, city manager, for your understanding in terms of what we've got, where we've been. You know, it's a long time with one outfit. And don't get me wrong, you know, you've done a great job with us. It's been a long-term partnership. But one of the things I worry about, you know, you get older, you get a little wiser, and it becomes nothing personal. I think everybody's done a great job. We pay you good money to do the service, you do the service. But, at the end of the day, my obligation is to the taxpayers and making sure we're covering the bases. And 16 years, not one recommendation for an audit, for a look. And I'm not trying to cast aspersions or anything like that, but at the same time, you know, I start to wonder about a financial situation or a CAFR or anything else that, you know, every year we come across with flying colors consistently, you know, and I guess that's a good thing. No material weaknesses cited, no compliance issues cited, and, you know, well, all right, I hear you. It's amazing, and it's a good thing, I guess, in a sense, that we consistently pass with flying colors. And on the face, it's good news. I get that, and it is. But underneath the surface, I guess you can say, and this is just me, I'm looking for problems. I'm looking for issues. And don't get me wrong, College Park is a great city. But I guess after a while, if you have the same eyes on the same thing for long enough, you're not going to see something that fresh eyes would see. I'm just going to be frank with that. And that's just the truth with any situation. And again, this is nothing personal to you, but I'm looking for issues. And maybe we're just spotless and it just is nothing, everything is that 100% excellent. But I'm not so sure about that necessarily. And it's nothing whereas, you know, if you have the same people looking at the same thing for enough years, you get into a pattern or whatnot. Not to say that you've gotten into that, but when we do these things, I'm looking for problems. You know, if we had a forensic audit, would it be as clean as this, CAFR? I don't know. I'm not a financial person, but all I'm saying, city manager, I'm hoping that you're hearing me. I'm looking for problems, and there's nothing wrong with that. And consistent flying colors is great. But at the same time, I've been around long enough to know that I think at some point we want to put some fresh eyes on things. And again, this is nothing personal at all, but you've done enough of these budgets, which I have, not to mention the 2 in Fulton County, which was a real eye-opener in terms of audits and things that you look for that you may not normally want to include or assume, but I'm not talking to you directly, but Stanley, I think you hear where I'm coming from.
I do.
All right. couple other questions I actually had about some of the internals here, and I'll be
And I would say
quiet.
this was the first year that the city didn't have any findings. We reported a lot of findings in the past.
We have had findings, but in terms of the deficiencies, these things, material weaknesses, these type of things, I'm happy, but there's some, in the back of my head, there's some moment of worry in that as well. You could be happy about something, but worried too, but nervous at the same time, I guess, more or less. I guess paranoid, whatever you want to call it. All right. Where am I here? There was one issue here, and this stuff is pretty small to read. I had my magnifying glass out for this stuff. Quite a few schedules here. And now I can't find what I was looking for, but I thought I earmarked it. Oh, the current fund balance, can you give me that again? Just the current fund balance and then the current liquidity without the transfers? Because you touched on one of those numbers.
All right, for your general fund, your total fund balance was about $23.6 million.
Okay.
And what I would do is look at your unassigned fund balance, which is about $16.7 million.
That's without transfers in, or?
Well, that's including transfers in.
Okay. What about without transfers in?
Well, you just back out about 5.6 million you had transfers in. So just say about 11. It was
11,
about 11 million.
okay. And then current liquidity?
It's about, cash about 17.3 million.
17.3.
3 million, which would be less than, which would be still more than your unassigned fund balance.
Okay, I didn't know exactly where I would find those three numbers in
Page-
this packet, but.
Page 19 and page 20 of your act.
Okay, in the spiral,
Yes.
Okay,
The big-
okay.
Yes,
all right.
your act.
Which one, page what?
Ackford. The big document
Oh, the one I have, okay. Page
Page.
19 and,
at the bottom, page 19 and page 20.
okay, all right, got it. Okay, that's all I have for now.
Councilman Allen?
First of all, thank you very much for being here and the work that you do. I know it's long and it's tedious, and out there, your group also for working with them so much that you do. I've been involved with budgets and financing for over 12 years with one company, and so there's a lot of numbers to dig into, and I appreciate all the hard work that you do, and I appreciate Althea. Your whole team does a great job. And to not have anything, I appreciate it. And we have had some in the past. I remember some of those. So, but again, thank you very much I don't have any questions on it, and appreciate the job you did.
Thank you.
Councilman Gay?
Hey, Mr. Moses, I don't really have any questions, but I do, as well concur with Councilman McCorn that it may not hurt to sometimes deviate and have a second look at the numbers, just for anything, just for,
And I'll make one comment to that. I had another client that suggested something like that as well. And again, you're free to, pick another audit firm. But we're big enough that we can change up the entire engagement team from the partner all the way down to the lower staff and not have anyone, and actually have a different office to do it as well. So that's always an option if you're wanting to rotate auditors without necessarily switching firms. So that's always an option as well. But I always try to have a different partner to do the quality control review. And we did have some new staff on this audit this past year as well.
if Towers Perrin do audits?
Who?
Deloitte and
Deloitte and Touche, KPMG, yes, they do.
They do?
But they don't do many Georgia governmental audits.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moses. We appreciate your time.
Thank you all as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a conversation on residential electric rates.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and council members. 364 days ago, I gave you a presentation on our rates and how they stack up to the other 93 power companies in Georgia. And I'm here to give you a rerun of that presentation with a few changes, but I'll make it quick. Just to set this up, let's look at the history of our residential rates going back to 2011. The last time we had a increase of the actual rate was in January of that year, less than 2%. I think it was around 1.6. And we also moved the power cost adjustment to a franchise fee, and we also, that was the year we added the senior rate, which waived at that time was a $7.80 base charge. Then in 2016, we increased the base charge from $7.80 to $10. But we made up for that by reducing the rates by 3.4%, which made the senior rates go down even more by 6.4. We blended in the power cost adjustment to 0. And then the last rate change we did was November of last year, where we did reduce the senior rates by another 10%. This is a little bit of a history of our power cost adjustment. And I won't go through every line, but you can see where in 2011 I was talking about where we moved the power cost adjustment January 2011 from PCA to the franchise. And the franchise, of course, is a collection that goes directly to the general fund. We started ramping up a little bit, but what happened was we had a perfect storm of things to happen. In 2017, January 2017, we had a contract default. And then our trust fund depleted in December of 2018. That was a credit we were getting on our monthly bills until the trust fund depleted. And then in March 2020, we got back the 15 megawatts that we had sold to another city that that defaulted on the contract. Total of all those three, around $9 million. So we had to do a power cost adjustment to make up for that. I know Ed Wall calls it a rate increase. I don't call it a rate increase. Rate increase to me is if you have to increase the local rates to operate the power department. So that basically was the increase to get back our cost of power. A little bit on rate design. Everybody pretty much has a break point in the residential rates, and ours is 500 kilowatt hours, and that covers the first usage of appliances, lighting, and water heaters. And anything over that typically is heating or cooling. So in summer, we have a higher rate because that's the typical time of the year that generates our peak and our cost of power for the next year. So the price signal is, hey, it costs more in summer. In the winter, we have a break that goes down because we want to compete with gas heat, and we want to reward those that use electric heat. A little bit of information here. The average monthly usage in summer was 812 kilowatt hours per month and 823 per month in winter. We had 7,400 residential customers, including 417 seniors. Those are last year's numbers. That number now is more like close to 7,700 residential consumers and a little over 500 seniors. So our current rate in place is the base charge of $10, 8.8 cents kilowatt hour for the first 500, but over 500 in the summer, it goes way up to 12.5 cents. That's May through October. In winter, it goes down to 7.8 cents over 500 for your heating, November through April. Plus we have the franchise fee, plus we have the power cost adjustment of 2.9. There is a Public Service Commission survey that's published twice a year. They call it winter summer. It's typically January for winter, July for summer. And instead of listing all 94 power companies, I've made up these columns here of each kilowatt hour level that they have in the survey: 500, 1,000, 1,500, and 2,000. And I ranked them 1 to 94, 1 being the highest power company in Georgia, 94 being the lowest. And here's how we fit in that list. The line going across the horizontal is the median line, around number 47. So for winter, the rates look pretty good. We're below average or right at median at 2,000 kilowatt hours. So I think overall the average at 1,000 is with 3.4% below average. But the issue is this summer survey. At 500 kilowatt hours, we look good. But when you're getting into the heating and cooling costs over that, we're near the top. We're just number 9 from the highest at 1,000, number 7 for the highest at 1,500 and 2,000. I think I told you last year, if we had a wishing lamp and we could wish that these rates were lower, here's where we'd like to see them to go at that level in the summer, and that's what basically your cooling costs, into a more competitive range, more near the median of these levels. Basically, I don't think we need a lamp. I think we can do it. And I got in our regular session proposal a rate change to get us to this point from 9th to 29th, from the highest at 1,000. And 1,000 is more like toward our average, so I look more at 1,000 kilowatt hours when I do that. And of course, the same almost holds true for 1,500 and 2,000. In case you want to know, you go back to the summer survey. Senior rates are not on the survey, but if you had put the senior rate on the summer survey at 1,000, it would rank number 48, right at the median. If you put the summer rate on the winter, it would rank 93, second from the lowest in the winter. So the winter rate senior is excellent. So we have no issue with the senior. We have no issue with the winter rate in general. So the proposal in the general session would be to change the rates to get us to that level and change the senior rate to keep that 10% reduction after the change. So that's basically it.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Questions? We'll start with Councilman Clay.
I think this is great. That's a great opportunity to help our citizens. Things have gone up all over. This is one thing that's coming down, at least in College Park. And I ask you a couple questions, which I don't copy everybody on, but I like the fact that you pointed out that this is going to be recovered essentially because of the new houses that have gone up and are going up and will continue to go up into the next year and so forth. So that's really good news. And just for the benefit for people that are listening in, we contract for so much power from MEAG, and we either have to use it and sell it to ourselves or sell it to somebody else. And as you pointed out, and that I had forgotten, when we sell it to somebody else through MEAG anyhow, we don't get market rate, we get the wholesale rate. We don't get the retail rate, I should say, we get the wholesale rate. So I think this is really the right thing to do, and it's a great benefit for living in College Park. That's all I had.
Thank you, Councilman Clay. Councilman Carn?
All right, thank you, Hugh. Obviously, I think this is going in the right direction, of course. We don't get a whole lot of trouble out of your department, and it's not just because you got the biggest pockets compared to your colleagues. I guess we all borrow from you. Are we selling any supplemental at all to any other cities currently, or are we?
It is through the market rate sales. The MEAG sells them to other cities first before they go outside of the system.
Okay, but
we don't have any contracts.
We don't do the surplus contracts right now.
We don't have any contracts.
We're not doing those now. Is there any potential of that on the horizon at all, or do you think that's just something that's?
I don't think so, because with that doing it at market rate or lower, and I
Okay.
wouldn't want to do that.
All right. A couple of things I noticed in your piece here. The rate design considerations, when we talked about encouraging electric heat over gas. You're probably aware we're looking at overhauling the apartment codes and ordinances, complete multifamily redo. Do you think if we mandated all electric for multifamily, how much do you think that would benefit us? I don't know what percentage of multifamily is gas. And again, I'm only speaking to the larger units, not the quadplexes or duplexes and stuff like that. But at some point, I'd like to see what the percentage is. I'm assuming it's vastly majority electric, of course. But I'd like to know what remains, and if they convert it over, how much is left to convert over, you know, if we're 85% or whatever. So I don't know who can do that survey, but somebody, city manager, would probably need to look at that.
I think I sent you, Councilman Carn, a list of all our apartments one time, and I notated which ones still have gas heat.
Okay.
Yeah, they have Rugged Valley is pretty much all gas heat.
Okay. Well, if you could send that again, so
Okay.
I'd like to take a look at that. And this is just in the future, you know, after we take a look at what we want to do and what we want to change. Packet page 157, if you could explain to me again why we rank so much higher in the summer rates here. When I see under 500 kilowatts, we're number one, and we're number one 500 kilowatts in the winter, right?
No,
Or am I looking at this?
you're looking at it wrong.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, okay, 54. Okay. This is like really dark green, and
Yeah, it
I'm
does
having
show up
trouble. Okay, I see it. I see it now. Okay. So we're still, I guess, somewhere in the middle here, or
Actually, below average.
we're below average? Yeah. Right, because the lowest is 44. Okay,
94.
94. Wow, this is really hard to see. Okay, you're not 94, yeah. Okay. The other issue that I wanted to definitely discuss, and city manager, I know you just getting here as well. Can you just touch on the other potential data mining deal, land acquisition, and just the broad ramifications of what that could potentially mean in terms of if we're going to do it, if we're able to do it, what is it going to take to do it, and
Well, we're looking at one site next to our Edison station, and just talked to MEAG Power today, and they are going to proceed with installing another power transformer there. That may take a while because of delivery. So we have a pretty good location right next to that station to sell land and for the data center to purchase it. And I'm still pushing that. We can do some temporary serving of them right away, but where they want to go, we're going to need another transformer. But as far as revenue, I think we're getting away, or we're going to stay away from the guaranteed market rate. So what we're doing now is going to a market rate plus an adder. The adder is what we're going to make our revenue from.
And Stanley, at some point, I'm hoping y'all are going to delve into this thing where you could get a really fully realistic assessment of what we're talking about here. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we're talking potentially one outfit covering close to the amount of a great majority of the city's usage. Is that right?
I mean, yeah, you could possibly say you could double what we already got out there.
And I hope you hear me. One entity on a spot that would generate the revenue that would almost double our revenues. And we're contemplating selling this land. If it were me, I'd be selling the land wouldn't be an issue if we're talking about that type of revenue potential, but that's neither here nor there. But I think it's something we need to sit down and either put in a workshop at some point, because I think it's serious enough. And if we're able to do something like that, the type of savings we could pass along if we wanted to, or whatever else we wanted to do, would you know, it would open up the doors for it. So, I mean, I'm glad to see where we're at. Last thing I know, Georgia Power they did that second tier increase, I think. Is that kicked in yet? The second one?
I don't know if it has, but I got some numbers if you want to hear them, but.
Oh,
they're
you know
going
I
up-
do.
They're going up pretty big.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing, for summer about a 16% increase, and winter about 11%.
And city manager, we've always generally been 10% less than Georgia Power for the same amount of kilowatt hours. But now, we're gonna go beyond that, the way it looks.
Yeah, we're going in the opposite direction. You know what's gonna happen.
And when we talk about this, you know, we had the financial, the audit, we're talking about selling land, we're talking about all these things. There are different advantages and things that we're able to offer that aren't gonna be in an appraisal, that aren't gonna be when someone's acquiring land. When you're gonna build here, you're building at 15% less for utilities. You know, there are a lot of other things that are in the mix where we can't undercut ourselves and undervalue our worth, because there are other factors that make us more valuable to someone building. So it's just a lot of stuff to just keep in mind. So, all right, good deal. I mean, it sounds like good news.
Councilman Allen?
Just a couple of things. I think this is fantastic that you've done this and to offset these rates and the senior rate. We were mentioning a minute ago, if a senior doesn't know how to do, they could go to our website and find out how to make sure that they get the senior rate. So if there's any seniors listening or in the audience that want to get that reduced rate, go to the website and find out what you need to do to apply for that rate. So that's all I've got.
Councilman Gay?
Mr. Hugh, I just had one question. We agreed to give the seniors who own their homes, the amount of property tax that they would pay offset their utility bill. Have you gotten with finance
Yeah,
to
that would be
discuss that?
That would be an Althea question, if she wants to answer that.
Is that gonna be something y'all gonna merge together?
Yes,
This
yes,
rate
we got it,
plus?
as far as the dollars, we got that part.
She's shaking her head. I don't know what that means.
That means no.
Have that kicked in yet? Well, because we're not gonna have the senior tax exemption on this November's ballot, we agreed, the vote passed that the seniors that have homestead will be tax exempt for the amount of their, credit against their utility. Have that kicked in?
No, it hasn't, and it won't until August, because then the attorney's office is bringing a resolution before you on June 20th to basically approve that, because you all made a motion, so basically this would put it on paper as far as the approval. And then I'm working with the communications department to be able to put the application online, and we're going to target the month of July, and we're going to basically target those seniors that may qualify based on what we have in the system showing their ages and telling them to apply. So we're going to be advertising for the month of July, and then we're going to start taking applications in August.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Floyd Bradley, I had a couple questions because I want to make sure that we're clear about this, because it's not every senior who owns a home.
Correct.
There are income requirements in regard to that
Income
credit.
requirements, yes. And this would be a test for us as far as next year when we actually do provide the senior tax exemptions on those that are homesteaded and those that qualify, because they'll still have to fill out the application, and we're trying to give them the ability to fill the information online and submit those documents online to support their eligibility.
I agree. A lot of my Ward 4 seniors are still thinking that they're gonna fall under the governor's tax exemption bill that was not put on the ballot. So be clear that there is an income requirement, because they're still thinking that they're gonna get it just without any means test, just because of their age.
Yeah, and they have to be homesteaded and own their home as well. So all those still apply.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Out there, I thought we set that up a couple months ago, that we were gonna do this.
But we still have to go through the process of identifying those folks that actually qualify for the exemption. We still have to adopt the ordinance. It's just not everybody come in fill out, because you all threw it on us at the last minute. We didn't know that was something that we were going to take on. But we are trying to work through the process so it's not,
Okay, I thought that it was the same exact identical set of folks that qualified.
No.
would have qualified under the others. Another set of qualifications?
It's the same set of qualifications for the senior tax exemption and those that fall under the disabled guidelines. So it's it's not the same as far as the utility credit or the utility discount that the seniors are receiving. The only requirement is that you have to be 65 years of age. Now, with the senior tax exemption, there are multiple requirements to be eligible for that.
But we were just this was the placeholder in lieu of it not happening this year.
Correct.
I thought it was going to be the same criteria.
It is. It's different from those that are currently receiving a discount. It's just the basic 65 years of age versus you have to be homesteaded. Because what we're doing is using those that qualify, we would use their 2022 tax bill amount, and that's what they would be credited on as far as the city's portion.
Okay, so we prorate it back to a year or beginning of this year, or what do we, is it just gonna start in August only, and just 4 months of it?
No, the total amount, They'll be
whole
credited
year.
the total amount based on
Okay.
what the property tax they pay for the city portion.
Got it, okay, all right.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to discussion of the consent agenda. The first item is consideration of an emergency replacement rolling steel door for Exhibit Hall C at the GICC. Questions for Ms. Miller on this one, Councilman Clay?
Yeah, I have a question for Mercedes. And I copied her on it, but I never saw a response, and I don't know whether I got it, because I got a lot of responses, so if I missed it, I apologize.
I did not get a question. I looked for your question all day yesterday, but I did not get one.
Okay, well, my question was, I said, was the door damaged by an accident, or did a component fail just due to being worn out? And why can't it be repaired as opposed to replacing the whole thing?
Okay, the door failed because a component stopped working. The doors are old, and the door just kind of collapsed. This is the second door we've had to replace. It could not be repaired. We had them to come out and look at it, and it could not be repaired. Those doors are 20-plus years old, and it was just time to get a new door there. It was an emergency repair, because if we didn't get the door repaired, we would not be able to rent those halls separately, because the client has to have a way to move into the exhibit halls, and that's through the roll-up doors.
Okay, that's all I had.
Councilman Clay, since Ms. Miller is also handling item 3B, do you have questions on the AV services?
3B, which is what?
That's on-site, the recommendation of staff for on-site.
No, I didn't have a question on that. These guys have been doing a fantastic job for us forever. And I think it's just an essential part of maintaining the quality of the service that Mercedes provides. Plus, they're used to doing, this is a big job.
That, and we have to remember that our audiovisual is not, they're not required to use them, but they're the preferred vendor. So customers do have the choice of bringing in their own, but we make money from them using the in-house audio.
So they must appear to the customer as to be quite competitive for the
Correct.
rate that you're charging.
Correct,
So it's a win for everybody.
yes.
Yeah, no, I have no other question.
Councilman Carn, questions on either 3A or 3B?
I got questions on both. I guess we'll start with the AV. It'd be great to see kind of a percent, I'm assuming most customers go back and use the recommended outfit on site, right?
Well, it'll be hard to calculate that because we don't have the same customers every year. But I did list in my information, the revenues, the history of revenues from the AV company.
Okay. So overall, most people are satisfied with what they get. And obviously, we do a lot of repeat outfits that come every year. They're pretty consistent with the same ones. They don't say, oh, I didn't like it this time, I'm gonna go with another.
Usually if a company wants to go outside, again, it's a preferred, It's not a requirement.
Okay.
Once they get a cost from the outside, they end up using the inside vendor, because if you go on the outside, we still have to charge you for a rigging supervisor if you're hanging stuff in the ceiling to protect the building.
So 90% of your folks generally, would that be safe to say 80%?
I don't want to give a safe number.
Okay.
I'll get one and give it to you.
Okay, I'm just curious, but look, I assume the vast majority of them. In terms of the rolling door, I went back there with the, your engineer. I saw the door physically, and it is worn out. And I said to myself, that's long overdue. And every year, Mercedes, I know money is tight, and you know how to squeeze those nickels until they holler. And it's great pinching pennies, but at the same time, you gotta get what you need over there, you know, and don't be afraid to ask. I always tell folks with the budget, tell us what you need, and we wanna make sure that we're getting you covered with what you need, but that's something that you definitely needed, and, yeah, no question there. But I always tell you, you know, when there's something that we need over there, you know, and this is every department head, speak up. If you need something, speak up, whether it's in the budget or not. Does that mean you will get it every time? No. But let us know what it is. Let us know. Don't be afraid to ask. So yeah, no question.
Councilman Allen?
Okay, no, I talked to you today. Thank you very much. My question was on the doors about the warranty and the audio visual. You know, it's so important to your all's clients to have it in there. I just appreciate everything you do, and they do a great job, so I don't have any questions.
Councilman Gay?
Hey, Ms. Miller, I don't have a question. Well, I do have a question. I just heard someone say they obviously must be very competitive. How do we know if they're competitive if we never bid it out? The audio.
But we did put out an RFQ. We don't bid it out because we don't charge for it. The audiovisual company do. But for this, we did put out an official RFQ, which should be in your packet.
Ms. Bradley, today you sent me an email at around 10 o'clock, right? And those, that, okay. All right. Got it.
I had one other question. With the doors, so there's a warranty on the doors?
There is a 3-year warranty.
3 years, okay. Now, eventually, do you think the other doors eventually are gonna wear out along those lines, or?
They probably will, but I'll get them repaired once they, just like the others, once they stop being operable, then I'll repair them. But we do work on them as much as we can before we get to the point of replacing them.
And the reason why I was asking, I'm thinking in the back of my head, well, ultimately, I mean, with time, obviously, you know, it'd be great if we could say, well, hey, we'll pay for this door, but we wanna, you know, put in funds now for, you know.
Well, this is
File,
the
you
second
know,
one
eventual
we have
repairs, I
repaired
guess.
about 5 years ago. We replaced one of the other doors. So this is number 2. So we only have 2 more to go.
So, I mean, just thinking in my head, I said to myself, well, you know, when the other 2 doors go, if it's 10 years from now, if it's 5 years from now, whenever it is, it's gonna be a whole lot more expensive. Would we ever look at something along the lines of saying, well, we'll put in for 2 more doors and pay them up now, so when they do go, we can get them done at a cheaper rate than it'll cost when they actually go, I guess, more or less. I mean, does that make any sense, or would they even do anything along those lines?
I don't know. I'll check, but I can't imagine they will because you have to store them and they have to make them.
Yeah. Okay, just curious. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Any questions for Chief Rogers on the motion for, or the consideration for Central Square Technologies? Councilman Clay?
No, I don't have any. This is a system we've used for years, and it makes sense to continue with it. If the chief's happy with it, I'm happy with it.
Councilman Carn?
Chief, this is what we need. All right.
Councilman Allen?
No, I'm good.
Councilman Gay?
No questions.
All right. Moving on to Peachtree Government Relations. Good evening, Mr. Bolia.
Good evening.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. I'm accompanied with our partner, Ohio River South. We hired Howard Franklin and Jennifer LaRosa. We provided you a PowerPoint that gives a summary for what happened during the 2023 session, some details about some other things that are going on. We're glad to go through it or certainly answer any questions you have about it and answer any other questions you might have about the legislative session or what's going on in politics in general.
Well, we will start with Councilman Clay.
PowerPoint's not in my packet.
No, it's paper copies were at your
Oh,
desk.
okay.
Where is it?
It's right there.
This is it here?
Yes, that's it.
Well, I obviously haven't had a chance to look through it since I just got it when I came to the meeting.
Would you like to go over some of the broader highlights of it, Mr. Bolia, while we have the opportunity to take a look? Oh, there we go.
Okay. Absolutely. So just some things in general that we love to talk about is the state budget has been robust for the last several years, even through the pandemic. But we're seeing for the first time a downturn in state revenue. And so what you saw the governor do at the end during the veto session was he had his budget director actually disregard almost $200 million in expenditures, which is a very unusual thing. It seemed that the disregards didn't matter what party you were in, what part of the state you were in. He just simply disregarded every single request from the Georgia General Assembly. So I think that is something that everyone should take very close look at, because it probably is going to mean there are steeper budget cuts as we look going forward to the 2024 session. One issue that I know that when we had folks at the Capitol, the homelessness issue was a big issue. We took a look at a study committee last year and we participated in that. And then this session, they did pass a bill that directed cities and counties to comply with any codes they might have regarding with homelessness. I think you're going to see more and more on this issue as it goes forward. We're seeing a lot of issues in other cities, and I think the General Assembly is taking note of that and trying to get ahead of those items. I'm going to skip forward on electric vehicles. There is an affordable housing bill that was looked at and did not pass. This is something that Mayor Motley Broom was very involved in. Her leadership at GMA was critical in making sure this bill did not pass. It would have limited what cities and counties could do with regards to ordinances, and it would have capped your ability to limit certain types of development. So I think that while they were trying to arrest a issue of affordable housing, I don't think the legislation that they were proposing would do that. And Mayor Motley Broom did a fantastic job testifying on behalf of GMA, on behalf of cities throughout the state. Let's see. I don't know if you want to talk about truck weights.
Sure. So just to give a brief oversight on that one, as you probably recall, the governor did have an executive order during COVID that did increase those truck weights at that time.
Could you talk closer to the microphone, please?
Sure. So I think that some of the industry found that as an opportunity to increase their weights at that time, or this particular session. It did not get increased to the maximum amount they were asking for or what passed the House, which was 90. So it was kind of a meet in the middle, and I think most of the legislature saw the governor's support in that executive order as a chance to get in good graces and probably support this particular increase for the first time over decades. And so it does have a sunset, so it will be looked at again. And at that time, I expect GDOT will come back with full force as they did this time, and so will the local jurisdictions, to really show that the differences that these weight increases did have.
Two specific pieces of legislation to College Park. House Bill 270 was the College Park senior exemption. This bill did include, as you've heard previously, some specific limits. You are either disabled and or have a certain income limit to qualify for this. I should say your counsel, Winston Denmark, did a fantastic job of crafting this legislation and working with legislative counsel, which I think at a minimum we can say was difficult. But I think he prevailed on many, many points to get this legislation the way you wanted it. And the other bill that we looked at was House Bill 124 by Representative Roger Bruce, which dealt with emergency transportation vehicles, ambulances in College Park. While the bill didn't pass, I would say that it allowed the city to engage in a discussion with Grady, which I understand now from your city manager that they have a emergency ambulance in the College Park area much more readily available. So I think that could be considered a win for us. I don't know if anyone else wants to talk about that specific issue. There are several bills that were critical to GMA. I won't necessarily go through them. I think you probably heard that through your summaries from GMA. But one thing we are going to be looking very closely at is study committees that are going to be going on this summer, this fall, and concluding around December of this year. Some of those ones that we think are going to affect College Park include EMS reform, and there's a joint study committee on lost and service delivery. So I think those are things that will be very interesting. We will be at the GMA conference. Howard and I are both planning to attend that, so we'll be available if you all are there and would like a in-depth discussion on these matters. We'll of course be listening very close to what the officials of the GMA are saying, because they are great representatives for all cities in the states. We're glad to be part of that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bolia. Councilman Clay?
Yes, Don, the one thing on our College Park legislation, it's effective 5/1, but that does not apply to this year. That's still correct, right?
That is correct. As I mentioned, you know, we argued that it should be on the ballot sooner, but it wasn't able to be, so we'll be on
Right,
the
no,
ballot.
I know the history,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
just want to make sure I still had it right.
Correct.
Okay. The second question I had is, a while back, thanks to the governor, there was a return to the taxpayers. Even I got a return. I'm not quite sure why I deserved it, but I got it, and I was happy for it. But now we're turning around and we've got a tight situation. So to what extent, as you can anticipate, or why would we give a rebate if we understood the fiscal prognostication of going forward and then say, oops, now we've got a tight situation? I would have rather not gotten the rebate. I don't know whether anybody else can speak to that, but I would have rather not gotten it and not have the state in a tight situation such that we got to scale back other services in whatever form we're scaling them back. Do you know why that happened outside of just politics, or, I mean, did we miss something?
Well, not to get in the head of the folks at the budget office at the state or the leadership of the state, what I would say is that it's in part how the legislature budgets. So we actually have two budgets that were passed in the 23 session. There's what they call the midterm budget, which is effectively a budget that lasts from January 1 of 2024 till June 30th of 2023 to June 30th of 2023. And that budget really is to take into account the change in school spending that happens because of head counts that occur when the kids go back to school and they've already budgeted for them. So that was the purpose of it, but what happens is a lot of things get put into that midterm budget, including some of these tax cuts. And those things are generally debated and voted on in about February of 23. I think they didn't see their first decline until the March numbers, which don't really come out till a little later, and then the April numbers. So the numbers lag behind from a data standpoint of what the state's seeing about 30 days. And so by then, they had already pretty much had hammered out the FY24 budget. And I think it's largely due to process. But that being said, I think the best the governor could do to sort of look at the issue after the data has come in was to do those disregards on about $200 million in spending. And that being said, the rainy day fund of the state is pretty robust. So there's a significant amount of money in the rainy day fund that's probably more than they've ever had to sort of weather the storm, so to speak.
Okay, all right, that's all. Thank you.
Councilman Carn?
I got a few things. And obviously, I don't think I have to tell anybody where I'm starting off at. So I guess nobody's gonna say it, nobody's gonna talk about it, you completely overlooked it. Nothing to say about last year, this year, the big screw up. Nothing?
I'm glad to answer any questions you might have, sir.
Well, I would be glad to hear an acknowledgement of what happened so that the public knows, first of all. I shouldn't have to ask you about that if you're asking to be renewed again.
Well, I think we discussed that pretty much at length at the last time we were here, and we're glad to talk about it again. I know that there was some discussion about whether or not the correct version was passed in the 2022 session. I think we acknowledged and we made as many changes as we could. We tried to accommodate and get it done for a earlier vote in '23, but unfortunately Legislative Council ruled against us on our ability to put it on an earlier ballot in 2023 and ruled that we had to put it on the November 2023 ballot.
All right. So, City Manager, and this is not just for you, this is mostly for the public, so that you know exactly what went on here. When I talk about this city and our standards being too low, this is a textbook example. And what would probably happen here tonight, well, my first question is, I didn't see this on the regular session. I see it on the workshop. But since when have we started voting on items in the workshop session? Because this is...
This is part of the consent agenda.
Consent agenda, Joe. For the regular session.
Well, here's the thing, and for those that don't know what happened, this was probably the biggest screw-up I've seen since we've hired lobbyists since I've been here. And if anybody expects me to renew this, there's no way I'm going to do that. Now, Howard, I've known you for many, many years, and there's a partnership here with 2 lobbying outfits. But Don, you're the lead on this, is that right?
That's correct.
That's what I thought. Before I make my comments, my recommendation would be that we put this out for bid and take a look at everything else that's out here. And if these 2 outfits want to bid again, I would recommend, they're welcome to do it. But the amount of neglect and overlook here is unbelievable to me. If I were just a customer and you were a business I was doing business with, I'd ask for all of my money back. I would ask for all of my money back. You get something to the governor's desk and it's the wrong bill. The governor signs the wrong bill because you all didn't overlook and cross the T's and dot the I's. And then you turn around and blame it on some of us up here. You blame it on some of our state legislators, which you did on video. Everybody but the lobbyists whose job it was to carry the football into the end zone. And you did not do it. And I want the public to understand why I'm not supporting this and why we keep accepting subpar standards with the things that we're doing here and the money we're spending. So I want y'all to follow me on this, and it's kind of hard to follow. But most of y'all heard me say, we hired them to get a bill through both legislative houses, through committees, and to the governor's desk for signature. When they got it to the governor's desk, they gave him the wrong bill. I'm going to say it again. They gave them the wrong bill, and the governor of Georgia signed the wrong bill. I guess the best way to analogize this, if you're paying your tax money for services, and folks, listen, I don't want y'all to take this personal at all. If you want to rebid, you can rebid. I'm absolutely not gonna approve this after the job you did last year. And I don't want y'all to take it personal because it's not personal. But my obligation is to the taxpayers and residents of this city first and foremost. And a lot of times some of us don't understand the meaning of the word. And I explain it to residents like this so you can understand exactly what happened. And what would you do in this situation? All right, let's say you're a resident, you hired an attorney for something that you needed to have taken care of in the legal system, in the courts. Let's say you hired them to represent you for an adoption case. You wanted to adopt some child, right? Okay. You hire the attorney, they do the paperwork, they get everything together, they go work things out with the kid and the counseling and the whole nine, they get it to the judge, they get it to court, and everything's going well. You get to court, judge signs off on the papers, and you got your adoption, you've adopted your new child. And then guess what? You find out, well, somebody didn't look at the paperwork, we adopted the wrong kid. And I depended on my attorney to check the paperwork to make sure we were adopting little Billy, and we ended up adopting Susie Q. Now, do you think the next year or following year, I'm going to hire the same law firm to try again to adopt the right kid because they didn't pay attention to the detail in the paperwork, get it to the judge again and have him sign papers on the wrong kid again on my behalf and I pay for it twice? You know, it's just unacceptable. It's a substandard level of service. And we're going to sit up here, y'all watch what I tell you. We will sit up here and pass it and approve it again. You watch what I tell you. But I'm not going to accept it. I'm not going to accept that. I'm not going to accept that. You'd have to be crazy to do that again. I don't think any citizen would do that again. So, and this right here, this is a textbook example of what I'm talking about. We didn't get their packet until today, after executive session. Folks, you hire lobbyists to handle the paperwork. You hire lobbyists to handle the business. I don't understand how your firm cannot manage to get us the material for review in a timely manner while everyone else presenting at workshop and at the regular session got their materials turned in to the city last week. And we're counting on them to take legislation up to the Gold Dome to the governor? Come on. You got to be kidding me. That's all I got, Mayor.
Councilman Allen?
I have no questions.
Councilman Gay?
Well, I think you said it all for me. Well, I would like to add to that you did explain that to us, but we were told, and Councilmember Corn, I don't think it was a mistake. I think it was intentional. That's just my belief, that governor got that wrong bill. Because the citizens 65 or older who owns their house could have got a tax break, even though we goof. And it wouldn't have cost us but $800 to $1.2 million. And they deserve that tax break. And there's people on this council who voted against that, but they voted against everything but a quality of life for seniors who lived in this community and paid their taxes before many of these people ever lived in our city. So voters, please understand that. But more importantly, we were told that it was going to be on November's ballot, this November 7th. So you just praised our city attorney when in fact it wasn't even put on the ballot. In fact, the legislative council sent numerous emails that I dare you put it on the ballot. Try it. So the citizens won't even get to vote on that this year. Maybe we'll get another shot at it in the next council.
I do believe it's going to be on your November ballot, assuming the city requested from the Fulton County Elections Division.
November 7th?
Correct.
That's correct.
I wasn't even aware of that. That was something y'all know about? You too? I didn't know about it. Y'all gonna tell us?
It was in our Sani Die report, which we sent out weeks ago. Yeah.
She did? And the state is okay with that?
Yes, sir.
So why didn't we just put the governor's deal on the ballot for 65? Why do we have to fight him on that? I mean, why didn't we just put that one on the bill, on the ballot, 65?
I think it is, that is the age.
Without the income.
Without the qualifications. My assumption is that was the vote of the will of the council to have the limits on the,
So Mayor, can we,
based on a council resolution.
I'd like for us to remove this item off the consent agenda, please.
That would be appropriate when we get you amendments, changes, and deletions to the agenda
Okay.
in the regular session. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll take a break until 7:50.
Okay.
7:50. 7:50. 750.